I think it's recording now, right? Yeah, it looks like it. All right, so I was gonna go over a Botvinnik game first of all. So like, this is from one of his more well-known books called 100 Selected Games. So basically, he selected, as the title puts it, 100 games, and he annotated them himself. So it really gives a good insight into kind of like a master's sort of play and how a chess master thinks and plans about chess. So in this game, Botvinnik is white, so we'll flip the board. And he plays d4, d5. I think this is a queen's gambit declined. And yeah, so these are all very common moves. Castles, knight f3. Oh wait, yeah, b6, rook c1, bishop b7, bishop d3, knight bd7, castles. And here, knight e4 was played. But c5 is also playable. That's what he was thinking. If c5 were to be played, he'd move queen e2 after the exchange. Well, whoops, that's not right. The knight has a nice square on the right here. Queen's protecting it. This wouldn't be too bad of a position for white, but black did move knight e4, and here Botvinnik played bishop takes e7, but in hindsight, he thinks that maybe bishop f4 is a lot better, because after this exchange I just got rid of my annotation. But after the exchange of the knight and the pawn, this rook will be like more active. It's going to bear down the c file with the support of this bishop. Oh my gosh, I'm removing all my annotations. There we go. So black instead, after trading, after bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, everything just comes off the board. And here it may look like that white has lost a piece, but he indeed hasn't, because he has rook takes c7. So if we look back a bit further, right here, in order to avoid the fork that's about to happen, white could move bishop to b1. Bishop to b1 instead of taking the knight. But then you run into f5 here. But yeah, so after f5, black has a knight that is very strongly rooted on e4, and that's bearing down all of its, I guess, gaze on these crucial squares. And if you were to get rid of it, which Botvinnik analyzed after knight takes e4, f takes e4, rook takes here, just a series of exchanges, queen g5, g3, queen g4, king h1, rook f6, rook g1 to, I guess, cover this square, rook h6, queen f1 to try to prevent the queen from coming here, but then rook h3, and black has a winning game. There's no way that, the queen just needs to move here, and then there's no way that black can protect this pawn without losing a piece, which is the rook, I guess. There's no way that white can win here. So Botvinnik instead just chose to take c7, bishop moved to c8, and then here he moved a dubious move, bishop b5. He thought that bishop e2 was a far more correct move because of queen d6, queen c1, e takes f3, bishop takes f3. Wait, let me do that. Bishop takes f3, bishop a6, bishop takes a8, bishop takes the rook. After this exchange, you know, white would have the 3 pawns. Well, if you look at the material now, white has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, while white only has 4, and white has, well, black has an extra knight in that case. So 1 knight for 3 rooks. White has counterplay here. He does have a majority of pawns on the queen side. The 2 pawns here versus the 1 pawn here, as well as just these 2 pawns being, well, this one being like a pass pawn. So there's no pawns in front of it that can block its way. And this one also like kind of a pass pawn. It can run into problems on the F file, but other than that, you know, there's nothing really to stop him. So this would be a type of position in which, you know, would offer more counterattack, more like counterplay. But by moving bishop b5, you kind of get rid of the options for the light squared bishop bearing down this diagonal. So black then moves e takes f3, which completely gives away all of his advantage here. So instead, by moving queen d8, you kind of keep, like, this knight isn't going to really go anywhere because you're attacking the rook, right? So you could take that. You can take that right here, right? Or you can just wait a move, get your queen to an interesting position where it's attacking the rook, see where the rook goes, and then take it, right? So after queen d8, say rook takes c8, rook takes c8, and black is completely winning here because if, I don't know, there's just nowhere that the rook can go without losing this knight. And so instead, e takes f3 was played. And Botvinnik has a chance here. So queen takes f3, queen d6, and here, surprisingly, black has just completely lost the game. Well, he's in like a losing position, I guess. So queen moves to c6. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If queen takes c6, bishop takes c6, attacking the rook. If the rook moves, then he'll just move it actually. So if queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes. Oh yeah, and then yeah, you take. Well, you can take here. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you take here. And I think yeah, you just completely win the exchange. Oh wait, no, you do take here. Never mind. Sorry. Because I think moving the other move, taking here runs into that might run into problems like this. No, it doesn't. Wait, what? Oh no, that doesn't win anything because you can always just take back. Yeah, and then it's equal. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, you take the pawn. Right here after the rook moves. Sorry. But then, so yeah, so black can't take the queen. So Stoltz instead moves queen to b4. That way, after the exchange, well, after queen takes a6, bishop a6, threatening the bishop here. Queen takes f8, knight takes f8, bishop takes a6. And now white technically has 2 pawns for the yeah, it has 2 pawns, well, 2 points more technically, because if you were to look at it, these have the same value, and then the 2 rooks compensate for the queen, and these 2 are both well, this one in particular is a pass pawn, and I guess as you'll see, Botvinnik utilizes his minor pieces, well, the rooks and the bishop very, very well to put pressure on this possibility of the pawn, I guess, promoting on d8. So h5 was played. Black is kind of getting a little bit desperate. He's doing two things here. He's freeing up a spot for his king. It's pretty obvious, but also just trying to cause problems with these pawns and like this side of the king, because all of white's pieces right now are pretty much on the queen side. So he's just kind of committed to passive defense. So rook takes a7, queen takes b2, bishop c4, knight e6, bishop b3. This like really cements the bishop here and shows black who's boss, basically. Because I guess these two pieces, you'll never really be able to take it. The knight, if you look at the knight really has nowhere to go. It can't go here. Wait, wrong color. Oops, no. It can't go here. It can't take this pawn. Doesn't have a home here. Can't go here. Like most of its squares are taken, really. And it's kind of wasting time if it goes here, because just you need to try to move your pieces towards the other, towards where all the action is, and it doesn't really make sense to waste time and move it away. So bishop is cemented here. Now all white really needs to do is just put pressure down here. So h4 is played, d5 is played. Just for now, the poor knight gets shoved down to d8. And it obviously doesn't make sense to move it here, just because, white can just move here, and there's nothing blocking the d8 square. And that's another thing too, just as a principle of chess, it's always, when you have a pass pawn, it's always good to shove a knight in front of it. Why a knight? Well, just in general, if you were to have a knight in front of a pawn, not only is it hard, well, first of all, it's hard for pieces to attack. Well, it's easier for you to defend it, and also it covers some key squares around the pawn that you would normally, not like. Okay, well, I'll give an example, actually. Yeah, sure, I'll save. I'll give an example. So let's say, let's see, have a knight here, and then pass pawn here. So by having the knight right in front of the pawn, this pawn is trying to get to e1. What you're essentially doing is, first of all, you're blocking the pawn so it can't move forward. Second of all, you're attacking these two key squares where normally you would have pawns there to support this pawn. And when you're dealing with pass pawns, it's very important to just basically shut down the pawn. There's no real good way to explain it except for to devoid any possibility, or as many possibilities as possible, to defend this pawn. And so by putting a knight here, you're attacking these crucial squares. Also, well, this square as well as preventing the pawn from going forward. Suppose if you were to have a bishop there instead, we'll just add a few pawns behind it. The bishop does the job of keeping the pawn from moving forward and advancing. However, it doesn't really do anything to undermine the kind of dominance of this pawn here. It's not challenging the pawn itself or any of the surrounding sort of material. Next, if you were to use a rook instead, that's even worse. You're not attacking any of these squares at all, and you're just like, yeah, like if black were to move here, your rook would have to move and be all over. And then a queen is obviously the best. However, you can't really, well, a queen is good just because it's a queen. And putting a queen in front of a passed pawn isn't as good as putting it somewhere where it's more active. And so that's just a little spiel about that. Let's go back to the game. Wait, how do I go back? Okay, wait, did I mess it up? I might have messed it up. Oh no, I didn't. All right, we're good. So let's go back here. I'm pretty sure. Yep. Just big board. So I think we're, yeah, right here. So d5 is played, knight moves to d8. And so, yeah, the rook goes to d7 now. So now black just, he needs to protect it. h3, just, a solid move. You don't want any funky business with this pawn right here. You don't want any funky business with it going forward at all. Next, b5, e4, king h7, e5. If the queen takes, the knight is lost. Queen b6, and rook e1. Just these two pawns are just slowly moving forward. b4, kind of a little desperate attempt. e6 takes, knight takes, rook takes, and black later resigned because there's no way that one white queen, well, Botvinnik knew his endgames very well, so and with careful calculation, there's no way that white should lose this, and black later resigned. So this is kind of the first game by Botvinnik, just a little general game, kind of following a grandmaster, I guess. All right. Sure, I'll save it. So next we're going to look at a King's Indian defense game. So the King's Indian defense is a defense for black against d4. So normally d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, e4, d6, knight f3, castles. So bishop e2, e5, castles, knight c6, and bishop e3. So apparently, right now, d5 played by white and knight e7 is the new norm. But I guess in this game, which was played in 1993, bishop e3 was played, and here white moved, what was it? Black moved rook e8, which is also good, but I think, yeah, knight g2 and knight g4 is also playable, just like as a line. I think this is one of like an example game. So bishop g5, f6, moves back, and f5. So just as a little like note here, it's very commonly seen in the King's Indian defense that black moves these series of moves, just moving this f7 pawn to f5. The idea is to break apart this sort of formation, break apart this pawn structure to open up this bishop and that bishop and this rook. So normally the knight is preventing this pawn from moving forward. So by moving knight moving knight g4, gaining a tempo by attacking the bishop, then it opens up the possibility of f5. So bishop g5 is played, bishop to f6, takes, and as you can see, like a series of exchanges kind of happened here. Knight moved here, knight took, So yeah, this is just an example game. Let's see where it goes though, because I think I included it here for a reason. Yeah. So sometimes black doesn't get the opening of kind of this pawn structure, but then again, it can be used as a very useful spearheading sort of formation, which you use this very solid pawn structure because there's really no way to attack it now, or slip through the cracks now that the dark squared bishop's gone. Then you can really use it for a lot of things, like pushing e4, which I think he's trying to set up. So I guess to avoid the fork, bishop moves back to f1, bishop moves there, just a series of exchanges, and yeah, bishop c4 attempting d6, knight there. Yeah, I think if he moves here now, doesn't really do anything. So an entire big move formation, and he makes a mistake, and knight to e2 exposes the rook. Anyway, like I think I included this game just to well, this variation, just to show how active the end games can be. Just in normal orthodox openings, let's say if you're, I think the Scandinavian's pretty boring, in which nothing really much is going on. In the King's Indian, way too many things are going on. So it can change at any time, and I'm pretty sure the game, which is Lembit Ol versus Ilya Smirin or something. Yeah, but Smirin, Ilya Smirin. I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's a very active ending. So d takes e5, d takes e5. c4 is played, but queen takes d8, knight takes d8. Oh no, it's saying my meeting will end in 10 minutes. All right, I'll hurry up. Knight b5, knight e6, knight g5 is very, very equal. So white was trying to grab space by moving c5 and prepares to activate that bishop on e2 to b5. So next bishop g4 is played, bishop to b5, response, queen to c8, h3, bishop h5, bishop takes c6, b takes c6, bishop g5, and rook b8, and then rook b1. Now, if here white moved, wait, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, g4, this is, I think it's a pretty drawn game. Rook to d8, queen to e2, takes, yeah. So black has a shot at a threefold repetition here. Yeah, so basically, no matter where the king moves now, the queen will just check, and it's basically a threefold repetition. And white obviously didn't want that, so he didn't take on f6. So rook b1, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, knight d7. So it may seem like it's the end of the world that, double pawns are bad and all, but in this case, it doesn't really matter. The knight's on an active square. These pawns aren't very easily attackable, and yeah, because there's really nothing attacking it right now. The position is very closed, so black doesn't really need to worry about that. If you can get a pawn, it's already pretty good. So the King's Indian defense is very active. So next, b4 is played. a5. Knight f6 is also playable here. Wait, oops. Knight f6 is playable. Oh, nope, right here. But Smirin wanted to use up this a7 pawn. It's sitting there doing nothing. So why not just throw it in and also get rid of it in the process. If a3 was moved, a takes b4, a takes b4, knight f8, this position's drawn. I mean, there's like, it'll just be a battle on this file. Knight will go here. It's like, there's play here. So I guess, and now there's no weak a7 pawn. So if you go back, he didn't in fact move a3, but rather b5. And then black moved knight c5, which was a pretty interesting move. If he had just moved, wait, c takes b5, c6, knight c5, knight d5. Oh yeah, he overlooked this. He thought that after knight e7 he was lost, but after rook takes, bishop takes, queen e8, he missed that, and then bishop a3, queen takes, and black is completely winning here. Instead he moved knight takes c5, in which in response b takes c6 was played, knight e6, queen at e3, f6, bishop h6, rook takes b1, rook takes b1, queen a6, knight d5, queen takes c6, rook to c1, and then queen b7. I think black is a bit on the defensive side here, but in the end, black has his queen where it's like best. So it not only, it's not only like, not being attacked right now, which is obviously the best case scenario for the queen, but it's also very hard to attack it. So if the rook was to move here, queen would just take it, right? So there's really no square in which the queen can be attacked. And also it's a very active square as well. It completely controls this b file. So when you're playing, you really want to look for those types of squares. So then bishop g7 was played. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, queen f3, rook f8, queen g4, then f5. I think, yeah, black has won a pawn here, and it's just, he just needs to play correctly. Just as a little exercise, what if, f5 seems pretty dangerous, right? Like what if black moved e8? I guess like if you want to take a guess, take a stab at what white was planning here, it's actually a trap. So it would be, I think, white to move and win a piece in 2 moves. And since we don't have any time, because we only have 4 minutes left, white was setting up knight takes c7, knight takes c7, and queen to d7 check. This would obviously change a few things. Not only is the pawn taken back, but now black is put on kind of the defensive situation after the king has to move right here. And I think rook takes. Black is in a little bit of trouble here. So obviously, don't try not to fall for those kind of little traps while you're ahead. And think about your moves. f5, queen to g3, and then queen to b2. This is very active defense displayed by black. There are 2 types of defenses. There's a passive defense, right, where you're defending for the sake of just protecting the piece, right? But here black is protecting the e5 pawn, but also attacking the c1 rook. So you're basically negating threats, but also saying, now what are you going to do? So now one needs to do something about the rook. So he moves rook to c4, which was a little bit overextended. Rook to c6 would have been more accurate, but I don't have time to really go over that. So next c5 is moved. So what black is trying to do now is, again, this theme of this passed pawn, right? Squeezing the life out of this rook, essentially, because the more this this c pawn moves forward, the less space this rook has to protect kind of the c file. So white just moves rook a4, and then f4, queen to g4, trying some things, and now the knight moves to the great square d4, where it's the most active. It's protected by these two beautiful pawns, and there's really nothing white can do here. White snags a pawn, but it's pretty much too late. Black moves rook f7 as a precaution. It's always good, you know. The king is the most important piece, so it's always good to protect it. And white's a bit greedy, takes here, and then we have a little fun mating net. Well, kind of mating net. King h2 and then h5. So now it's basically a mate in two after, let's move here. I'll let you guys find this. So this was the second game. We have less than a minute left. So yeah, I'll just go over these two games. I'll go over space-time and pawn structures on the next lesson. And wait, let me just stop the recording so that